Hi guys and welcome back to my channel. So today we will be talking about 912 Batu Road by Viji Krishnamoorthy. So some time ago I went to the author's book talk at Lit Books and honestly I had so much fun. She is such a queen.
Right, so this is very new to me, so you'll have to be very patient.
And I also got my book signed. Ta-da! All in all, it was really awesome. Her mother was there, her husband was there. I'm not sure if her son was there, but it is definitely very clear that they're all very supportive of her and that it was a great night for all. I made a voice recording of the session, so you'll be able to hear bits and pieces of it. Fun fact, it took her 15 years to finally complete it. All those hard work clearly shown for all this. This is such a well-researched work with complex characters and real issues and not a first draft, by the way, not a last minute work, and certainly not an assignment that hasn't reached a minimum word count. Look at you, dear God, rough diamond.
At the start of it, I felt that in order to write about the present, I had to return to the past. And it seemed most natural because I wanted to set it against a historical background. And it seemed what made most sense was obviously Malaya in World War II. And we don't have that much of history that tags us beyond that. That's wrong, but I mean, that I wanted to write about this first. So that went back to World War II, then of course the Japanese invasion of Malaya. And I also wanted to write the story of a migrant coming from India. I have not read anything that, comes to this part of Asia, And the Brahmin community is a very small community. In Malaysia, today we're only about 300, there are about 300 families. So this would be similar to the story that my grandfather came to Malaya back in the 20s. So it would have been something along those lines. I mean, I don't have it as fact, I never did meet my grandfather, but from stories that you glean. So it was important for me to write in the now. I had to go back to the past.
If you watch one of my previous videos, I put this book as one of my Malaysia Day recommendations, and today we are going to unpack all of the goodness in it. So this book is about 3 generations between the 2 families, the Ears and the Tans, and they are Malaysian Indians and Malaysian Chinese, respectively, going back and forth between the past and the present. So in the present day, we are dealing with Romeo and Juliet story between Geeta and Ken, who are in a relationship that is threatening to break because of who they are, while Geeta mostly deals with the pressure of her family expectations of her as a Brahmin Indian woman. While in the past, we delve in the Japanese occupation period of Malaya through the beginning of the 2 families as it bled through present day. Now, the present day in this book does not refer to like 2020 or anything. It's actually 2008, 2009 if I'm not mistaken. I love how the wartime and the present time is intertwined with each other, and both are progressing in almost the same time and the same pacing. And it is actually really good to see them unfold. It is clear that especially for the historical aspect, Viji Krishnamoorthy definitely done a lot of research.
Tell me about the research. Yeah, very good assistant. He was a very, very, very thorough and compliant assistant. So actually Ranjit did a lot of research.
The other way around. I was researcher with a compliant writer.
Perspective. Yes,
but what did you learn in that research that you hadn't known, or that that was so surprising to you? That you
a lot, because I left Malaysia at the age of 10. So I went to India to boarding school. So a lot of the history that I wrote about was also a learning process for me, because I did not learn Malayan history, Malaysian history. So that was very, very interesting for me as well to come across like people like Buchan, whom I had no clue either. The civil Catholic history, you hear the name, but Buchan was completely someone who was very alien to me. So it was very interesting for me as well to sit down and sit with it and consider it and make sense of it, and then try and put that in a context of fiction as well.
As bitter as it is, history has always been very biased, and I'm glad books like this exist. The author portrayed Malaysian history from the Japanese occupation to the present day in a way that shows the contrast and similarities of what we have then versus now. We have like unsung heroes like Sibyl Katigesu and Gurchan Singh are also featured here. Briefly, but enough to let us know their existence and how they impact the story. In the past, we explored the relationship between Tan Chin Nam, Rangaswamy Iyer, and a Japanese man named Bob Nakamura. Through these three men, we experienced this friendship and betrayal, and how a man is forced to pretend to suck up to the Japanese in order to ensure his family's survival. Yeah, that was really, really hard because you understand the desperation that his priority is keeping his family safe. If your country has ever been occupied by the Japanese, then you know it was some bad time. We get to see this character's pain, because during the day he's like has to act really friendly and really nice to the Japanese soldier, but then when he comes home he cries and he's like in pain because like when he saw his friends getting tortured and beaten by the soldiers, he cannot do anything because he worried that they might go after his wife and his children. It's depressing AF. I mean, the unsung heroes, they are cameos, but the story just focuses on normal people and their fight for freedom. Like, I cried especially during the death of Chin Nam's eldest son, Kaho, if I'm not mistaken his name, and he was like alone in the Japanese prison just after being tortured for days and weeks, and the hallucinations are like so raw and just so heartbreaking. Like I almost could not finish it because how real it is. Like he was thinking about his dog, he was thinking about his mom, and he was just a boy and he has to go through all that, and yeah, it's terrible.
You take yourself to a very dark place as well, because you're trying to write an emotion there's sediment of grief and sorrow that you're trying to then translate. So you're trying to feel this emotion, then you're translating that onto paper. Not just translating it onto paper, then you're hoping that the person who's reading it can feel the weight of that sadness. So that was hard. That one was, that's a difficult place to take oneself.
I'm not gonna read it for you because Viji really milked it for what it's worth, for all its emotional damage that it has, and I'm also not willing to go through it again, so read it yourself. But more importantly, these people are not just caricatures of history. No. That's just too lazy. Oh, also, a side note, isn't it funny how white people have more appearances in our historical textbooks than the Chinese and Indian heroes who also fought for peace and freedom in Malaysia, who also happens to be just common people portraying the power of Malaysians if we all just unite? Like, is it really that difficult? Just a thought, just saying.
When you look back, I mean, people like Gurchan, someone like Gurchan he had such a big role in the war, in part of the Malayan resistance. But you don't really, I never learned about him in our history books, and I don't think there's much mention, there's no mention of him in our history books. And I think it's important to pay tribute to those who, are not unsung heroes. I mean, he and Sybil in particular were real unsung heroes. And of course, then there are the normal people. I mean, everyone is affected by a war, and you don't need to play big roles. You can do the little things of kindness and the little acts of goodness, which in this Ramaswamy plays, as the Black Dove. Or even Elaine, when she memorizes, when she singes those coordinates into her memory and she takes that with her. So I think it's important, it's nice to have normal people doing extraordinary things, which they do during very difficult and extenuating times.
But my favorite aspect of the book is, of course, the interracial marriage. When you're living in Malaysia, interracial marriage is like very familiar, along with the challenges that comes for such couples, familiar resistance and religious issue, etc., and also possibly even racism and stuff. And we go through along this issue with Geeta, with our main POV character. There's other POV characters, but Geeta is the main one. And she is an Indian girl from a Brahmin family, and through her, we get to experience the Brahmin family culture, like the Sunday afternoon lunches, the food, the weddings, and the early morning rituals.
Very
I know
informative.
quite a few people here who've experienced
That's what hers on the
could attest to it. It pretty much was that. It really was. It was so visceral and it was so tactile. I mean, I could put my hand in and feel the viscid ghee and the table is sticky. I mean, it wasn't a pretty table that we set. There was nothing beautiful about it. There were no placemats but it was honest and it was delicious and it was embracing. And whoever came to that table absolutely was part of that whole process. So, and it was exactly the way it was. Your slippers were on the outside. You came into the house. It was the living room, and then the young ones sit on the armchair, and the older ones come here kicked off the sofa. And politics was always the popular.
Honestly, I really appreciate that, and this mix of Tamil words along with the English language really makes for an immersive experiences.
My sensibilities are all very Tamil because we lived in an extended family with my father's side of the family. So I spoke Tamil from a very young age. I speak Tamil very fluently. So you find the dialogue in Tamil. And it was intentional not to italicize it because it would have been dishonest to me. Because it was very much my narrative as well. So I can think in Tamil. So as much as I broad-minded, but I find my upbringing was very much more Indian than it was Chinese.
And of course, like, her English writings are just as beautiful as her Tamil. Like, day was surreptitiously turning into night, discarding her bright colors and donning a dark blue cloak. Two good friends to a brotherhood that transcended blood and marrow. He replenished his soul, washed it out, plumped it out with good thoughts and positive energy. Malaysia is just so rich with culture that I think that it is important for us to celebrate this about ourselves. But more importantly, through Geeta, we experience the emotion that she has, that she is torn between her family and the man she loved. The bigotry of the older generation that is portrayed in this book is just so real and relatable that I realized that, well, as long as you're Asian, I mean, like, bigotry is not exclusive to a specific culture. You just have to be Asian, that's all. And I'm not saying that other cultures does not have bigotry. It's kind of prevalent. It's kind of hard to escape from that. I really feel sorry for Geeta, especially when they just outright refuse to accept her relationship with Ken, even though the family have been friends for generations. And like, she's an intelligent and successful lawyer, and despite all that, no matter, it just shows that when you're living in an Asian society, no matter how successful you are still not free to make your own decision in life. It's very difficult.
I would say it's a little less constricting, but the first conversation would definitely be down the arranged marriage route. So that will not, that's a, yes, that will definitely be the first conversation. And if there's any talk of wanting to marry outside, there would be a lot of resentment, there would be a lot of, there would definitely be resistance, right? So that would definitely still be the case, I would say, today. Of course, some parents have had no choice, at the risk of losing their children. But because it's such a small community, I think the further you are away from home, motherland, I don't like to use that term, so I put it in inverted commas. I think the more you want to hold on to your roots. So I think it would very much be part and parcel of the conversation today.
And this is also proven considering that the author, Viji Krishnamoorthy herself, comes from an interracial marriage. She's definitely borrowed some personal experience here, and that apparently her parents eloped.
I mean, I'm a product of half Tamil, half Chinese marriage. Yes, pretty much. My parents eloped. So they eloped and got married. And
good for you.
And to be honest, I think this is more of a problem with the previous generation. I think our current generation is more open-minded about it. And I really resonate with this one quote from Geeta. It says that, I guess everyone has their blind spot. And for them, like my parents, it was race and religion. Man's greatest folly, that one people is less than another, less pure, less holy, less enlightened. Yeah, I really think that it is interesting that decades after independence we have become more divided and prejudice just increased. I think I've seen peak unity during the pandemic. I mean, during the pandemic, like everyone was like, guys, gotta do something. Everyone was like super united. Everyone just all about helping each other, empowering each other. And I think that was like, despite the difficulty, we were together. We stand together as one, and I honestly I kind of miss it when everyone comes together for each other, regardless of race and religion. Now we are in an endemic phase, and for some reason we are like back to our old ways, and like, why can't we maintain it? I just think that it's a question that we all have to ask ourselves. Why is it so difficult for us to just unite as Malaysian? The ending of this book actually felt a little bit Bollywood-ish. Spoiler alert, if you don't want to be spoiled, you can just skip through this time. Towards the end, you know, Geeta apparently have to cave into her parents' wishes. She is has a blind date with this guy that her parents set up, and that guy turned out to be actually really cool. She likes him and she eventually just agrees to marry him. However, she doesn't love him and she just goes along with it because he's a nice guy, but her heart is still with Ken. And yeah, like I said, it just when you read it, it starts to get really Bollywood-ish and everything.
I always refer to the fact that it's a fractious relationship between mother and daughter, but as an extension of that, it's that relationship between traditional customs and what's modern, and how she's trying to navigate that path as much as her parents are trying to navigate, their own reality. For Geeta, I think I wanted it to be irritating and endearing, that at times you feel sorry for her, but at times you just want to shake her and say, for God's sakes, just bite the bullet and do something. So my son said, oh my God, she's so irritating.
Another thing that I forgot to mention is that I love how Geeta's struggle is aligned with her uncle. So her uncle in his younger days used to be in love with this woman, but they were from a different caste, if I'm not mistaken. And so both families are just totally against it and everything, and the woman ended up marrying someone else and the uncle ended up never marrying. Of course, the uncle is on Geeta's side when he found out that Geeta is dating Ken. So the uncle also understands that Geeta is being pressured when Geeta is has to marry this other guy. Even though there's nothing wrong with that guy, the guy is actually really good, but of course she doesn't love him.
It was quite organic that it would be quite nice for her to have an ally within her own family, and someone else who had that same struggle, and who didn't, like you rightly said, who didn't have the courage to stand his ground.
I just love how in the end, it's kind of this really little Bollywood scene that we have, where finally it's I think it was Geeta's father that was no Geeta, you shouldn't marry this guy. You know that you don't love him, and so we understand, marry Ken and stuff. Even though they actually showed this off screen, they immediately fast forward to the end when Ken and her went on vacation to Japan, and then they just a small flashback scene. But yeah, it's a bit Bollywood-ish, but I still like how it drives home the point. Sometimes you don't have to hold on to the past so hard. There are some things from the past that you can just let go and make room for new ones, because time changes, society changes. There are some things that you just have to let go to make room for changes for the better. And so those are my thoughts on Viji Krishnamoorthy 912 Batu Road. I highly recommend you read it, especially this is the Mata Merdeka, and this will definitely get you in the spirit. I am also planning to review some more Malaysia themed books that in line with the spirit of Malaysia. So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.
30th June 1944. So these are my two favorite characters here, Tochi and Gurchan. The two turbaned silhouettes scurried along the darkened street, casting their magnified shadows on the white walls of the convent-like street. It was now home to the Japanese Navy, and the two men had to be careful not to be spotted, for tucked underneath their baggy shirts were fresh Singer posters proclaiming the latest news about the progress of the Allied forces. The posters contained magical words that held the promise of the beginning of the end of the war. The Allied forces had recently landed in Normandy in the north of France, and on the Pacific front, US bombers had dropped their deadly parcels of explosives on the iron and steel factories in Kyushu. I'm going to read a little bit from, since we're doing this, Sunday lunch. Okay. One thing was for certain. Between noon and 2:30 p.m., madness and chaos reigned in Parvati and Ramesh's house. Adult voices fought to be heard alongside the screams and excited chatter of children, until the little ones were finally fed, watered, and sent off to play outside or upstairs to Ramesh Tata's room to watch cartoons. There was a hierarchy at the dining table and the seating arrangements in the living room to cope with 3 generations of Rangaswamy Iyers under one roof. A potent and combustible combination of personalities and characters. So this is how it worked. The 3rd generation was allowed on the sofas and chairs, but if any 2nd generation family member wanted a seat, the little one or ones climbed onto their parents' lap. If an elder needed a seat, then the 2nd generation was relegated to the floor or the arm of the sofa. That was the law, and it was never broken. Conversations flew across the living room, diagonally and sideways. There was a cocktail of heated and animated dialogue that bubbled away, a measure of medicine mixed with a touch of education and a dash of law. The cocktail stirrer, however, was always politics. It never left the glass.
And that's the beauty of the book. It's so visual.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.